let's have a look at some of the key moments from last night's ITV debate.
What are these two men going to offer us? Who are they? And why should they earn our vote?
If people are struggling with their bills, why do you want to make it harder for them?
This is the Prime Minister who's been part of a government that has put up tax 26 times.
You're going to hear a lot about the past in this election, but this election is about the future. Mark my words, Labour will raise your taxes. It's in their DNA.
7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. I'd like you to explain how they're coming down.
Because they were coming down from where they were when they were higher.
7.2.
And they're now on their way down.
Would you, if you felt that that was the only way forward, use private healthcare, Rishi Sunak?
Yes.
Keir Starmer?
No. We need to smash the gangs that are running this vile trade, making a huge amount of money.
Your track record says something completely different, and you can't be trusted to tackle immigration.
Please, gentlemen, we will lower our voices.
The arsonists handed back the matches. Now imagine turning the page with a Labour government that rolls up its sleeves and gets on with the job. This £2,000 he keeps saying it's going to cost is absolute garbage. We won't go into the details of it.
Andrew, Kevin, and Julie reminded me of a mum at a tea time brawl between two boys.
You think we're bad?
Going to use our inside voices,
Yes.
stopping them talking. He started it. No, it was him. He pinched my ball. No, he did it. What did you think,
But look,
Kevin?
who
won?
We are quite calm and collected and polite in comparison. I think next time she does it, I've seen her do it before, I think she needs a taser. And if somebody speaks over, I just shh and do it, or switch off their microphone.
Switch off their mics, perhaps safer than a taser.
Yeah, I know. Taser would be more fun. It made a bit Squid Game.
At least a buzzer when your time's up.
Yeah.
Because what I think everybody noticed was that Starmer was quite well behaved at the beginning, kind of kept to time, and when she told him off, he kind of went back in his box. Rishi Sunak just basically ignored anything she said and carried on talking over him.
And that is why Starmer then had to do it, otherwise you get drowned out. And I know we misbehave and get carried away sometimes, and we can do it, but then you always know you've got to respect you or whoever's with you, and sometimes it's a glare, sometimes it's a finger, I've noticed.
Sometimes it's an eye roll.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a very sharp word. We've been there, but of course that's what happened.
Andrew, did it play well for Sunak? Because what happened was he spoke over everybody, but it meant he landed at least the initial blows.
I think it's job done for Sunak, because the overwhelming impression was that Labour will raise your taxes by £2,000. It took Starmer virtually till 3/4 of the way in the programme to not challenge it. And he kept landing that blow again. And it was like he was punch drunk on the ropes, if it's a boxing analogy. He kept saying it again. And did he get a text halfway through the programme or something saying, no, you've got to say something? It took him too long to challenge it. So that was, for Starmer, that's why he won.
That was Starmer's mistake. The first time he said it, so that people know the truth about you. You've put taxes up to record levels, so don't lie about us. That's what he should have said straight away, because those figures are totally dodgy. Now, he didn't do that. But if you're Sunak, you're way behind in the mega polls, not the little polls, the mega polls, you need to land the knockout blow, which he didn't. Starmer would have been more defensive, because playing for an effective draw is a win for him. And after he's been carrying that Ming vase over a polished floor for 2 years, he's not going to start juggling it and risk dropping it and smashing it.
I remember the first time I did Question Time, I spoke to a few politicians about how do you play this. And what came back from all of them is you must choose on your questions, whether it's a sword question or a shield question. Are you going to go for it, or are you going to do a quick defensive answer and get out of it? And what it seemed to me watching last night is Sunak was sword on every question because he had to be.
He did.
And Starmer was shield on every question, but he didn't defend himself well enough on the £2,000. There is no £2,000 tax. This is actually talking about economic black holes, and therefore saying you're going to pay for it. And Sunak seems to have said, well, you're going to pay for it through taxation. But what Starmer needed to do at that point was say, no, we're not, and that's a misunderstanding. But he didn't come back, and so he let him through the defence.
And it's why the headlines today, The Times, Telegraph, all saying under pressure on tax, because I just couldn't believe it. I thought, is he going to challenge this figure or not? So, I mean, if that was say you only watched half the debate, and a lot of people, they'd have gone to bed thinking, no debate here, because he's not denied it.
That 2,000 figure is as credible as the 350 million a week on the side of the Brexit
why didn't he
bus.
challenge it early?
I don't know, but it was a failing. I'm saying, but we know how Sunak debates because we saw him against Liz Truss 2 years ago. He was accused then of sexism for talking over her every time.
20 times in 12 minutes.
I remember in 2019 he went up against, and it was a big panel, Richard Bergen, who is a Labour MP, or standing again, and he kept talking over him. You know how he debates, and I think you've sometimes got to fight fire with fire.
But Starmer is meant to be a clever lawyer, which is, again, I was surprised that at times I thought he seemed ponderous.
Well, you have a judge.
Yes, of course.
It's different rules of engagement.
Yeah, but nevertheless, he's used to the gladiatorial arena. That's where he's honed his living before he's an MP.
Kevin?
I was going to say there'll be a lot of people in the audience because he had them laughing at Sunak, particularly over NHS waiting lists coming down when they're still higher than Sunak said he'd bring them down.
Yeah.
But I think watching at home, other people will think, look, he's cool, he's calm, he's collected, he's serious. He's not a spoilt child, a spoilt brat. And
so Andrew,
that's what Sunak came across.
I wonder if we've got that moment about waiting lists, because a lot of people won't watch the debate.
Sure.
Yeah.
But they will know or be in a waiting list for treatment on the NHS.
Yeah.
And this was where Starmer was effective. Let's have a look.
But we are now making progress. The waiting lists are coming down. But what Keir Starmer didn't mention to you, which you did, Julie.
Waiting list 7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. He says they're coming down, and this is the guy who says he's good at maths.
Andrew, I mean, how can... If waiting lists are up from the point where you said you'd bring them down, how can you possibly say they're coming down?
He was caught out.
And the other thing is, people's lived reality is what matters to them.
Yeah.
You can say they might have come down somewhere elsewhere in the country or as an average, you know, if you are waiting 18 months for a treatment, they're not coming down.
And his defence was, well, it's worse in Wales, which is Labour-run. That's not what people want to hear, I don't think. So that was his weakest moment, I thought, in the evening, and Starmer's best moment. But I still think the takeaway is tax.
Well, it might be for you. Kevin, what was the takeaway for you?
Oh, I think the first question, the woman who can't afford to put on our oven because she just hasn't got enough money. And then Sunak was self-congratulatory about everything he's done for her. And I'm thinking, you're just not getting it. And in the end, elections are hearts and heads. And people in their hearts and their heads know they are worse off. And there are some people who are very worse off. And after you've been in power for 14 years, it's a record you can't shake off.
Yep.
Well, I thought it was also interesting. Within a minute, Starmer had mentioned Liz Truss. He mentioned her 3 times, but he didn't get a single round of applause. And I thought it was interesting. Starmer, and I thought, is Sunak going to mention Corbyn? Terrible Jeremy Corbyn, because that's been a line of his attack for years and years about the fact Starmer was in his shadow cabinet. He didn't, and I thought that was quite interesting. The other
word I didn't hear was the B word. I didn't hear Brexit.
Didn't mention one.
And now, given opposing sides, I think it's a 100 billion plus hit on the economy if growth is going to be 4% lower over the period Office of Budget Responsibility. Not mentioned one bit, and I think it's because there's two generals not wanting to fight an old war, whichever side you were on it.
The other one that I thought was an interesting way of answering was there was a question about, is the country safe under Keir Starmer? And when it was answered, Sunak didn't do the personal attack on Keir Starmer. He turned it into a party versus party attack. He seemed to back off and back away from doing the personal attack on that one, which I thought he was given the opening by the question and didn't come in. Actually, why do you think he didn't do it?
I think that because it would have looked cheap and nasty. It's rather like Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, repeatedly uses the line that Sunak is richer than the king. Starmer didn't do that. But on that security question, I thought Starmer's answer was very good because he said, when you are a banker making a fortune, betting against Britain, collapsing the economy, I was the director of public prosecutions prosecuting terrorists who would have downed 7 planes. I remember that. It was the explosives in liquids. case.
Which led to changes in security checks at airports.
Well,
that's right.
You still face it. You can't take over 100 mils in liquid and so on.
Andrew, interesting talking about security and Brexit, because the biggest campaigner on Brexit, Nigel Farage, was out yesterday.
He was.
And faced a threat to his security. Now, you might think, you know, people might think it was just a milkshake that was thrown at him. And in fact, he himself made a joke, you know, sort of riffing on the lyrics of a famous song, you know, my milkshake brings all the, you know, people to the yard, to my rally. The fact of the matter is, Andrew, politicians need to be able to go out and meet voters safely.
Yeah.
A milkshake is not going to hurt or kill anybody. 2 MPs have been killed.
Yeah, murdered by fanatics. And that could have not... That might have been acid. That's the point. And people think it's funny. It's not funny. And they should... Fine if you want to jeer them and heckle them.
Yep.
But actually, we want our politicians out there meeting people, and this will perhaps deter them from doing it. And I hope the person who's been arrested, who did it as a publicity stunt, I think they should be charged.
When it happened,
because it's assault.
It happened to
and we don't want this to... we don't want this to stop politicians engaging with us, the public.
There's a Yvette Cooper, Shadow Home Secretary, on this, just to say that this is a cross-party view.
Yeah.
Tweeted yesterday, disgraceful assault on Nigel Farage today, completely unacceptable and wrong. No one should face intimidation or assault in an election campaign.
Right.
Thank you to the police for responding.
The person who was a man threw a shake on Farage in 2019 in Newcastle, who got a conviction and lost his job. It is just completely wrong, because you do not want politicians to be intimidated and fearing, whether it's a milkshake or a tomato or an egg or somebody spitting on you, never mind something like a corrosive substance or whatever. It's just wrong. You can disagree with Farage, as I do, and I think he's spreading bigotry and division and hatred. But at the same time, it's a democracy. You have to counter that with arguments. And yes, jeer, heckle, you're quite right.
Yeah.
You don't have to say you're wonderful, Farage. There's clearly a lot of people don't think
and he's quite capable of handling jeering and heckling. He can handle himself very well, but that is unacceptable.
But Although he will probably turn this into a political advantage.
I'm sure he will.
Because he likes to be the underdog, the outside of society, the person who has to fight it through. I'm going to fight. You know, and so I think he will probably turn this. Not brings around.
But I think you're right, and he's entitled to try and do that. But of course, his line is everybody loves him. And you got everybody in Clacton.
He doesn't say everybody loves him. He
and
knows he's Marmite.
You will find that's not the case. I mean, a lot of those people yesterday in Clacton in that crowd weren't from Clacton.
But how many politicians on the campaign trail attract a crowd of that number? That was a huge crowd, and he gets it out. Boris Johnson is a similar figure. Well, they say they weren't. They say they weren't.
You're right. There's Farage, Johnson, and Jeremy Corbyn used to be able to. Whether he still can or not is...
He's a hugely recognisable figure, that's for sure. But we want all our politicians to be able to go out, meet people, and not feel intimidated.
Exactly. It's the intimidated bit.
You know, people will say, why would you be intimidated by a milkshake? Because you don't know what someone's going to throw at you. And you shouldn't be worried
If he saw
that,
but he might have thought, my God, what's coming my way?
Can I just say, anyone who says, why would you be intimidated by a milkshake? If they went out and they had a milkshake thrown on them, they'd be absolutely furious.
Yeah.
And then they'd be worried